All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about something kind of mind-bending. It's this idea of a hidden grammar, a secret language that connects everything in our universe, from the tiniest living cell all the way up to the biggest things we can imagine. So let me ask you this. What could possibly connect the microscopic world of a dying cell with, say, the empty space inside a ruined building? It sounds like a total riddle, right? Well, that's exactly the mystery we're going to unravel. How can these two incredibly different things actually be telling the same story, following the same deep pattern? To get to the bottom of this, we're going to follow two very different people. First, over in Sweden, we've got Mattias. He's a psychologist, and he's kind of lived his whole life in the shadow of his pathologist father. Then, in Berlin, there's Petra. She's a brilliant architect, designing these incredible futuristic buildings, but her own reality is starting to feel, well, a little fractured. Okay, so section 1, 2 lives, 1 question. These two, they're starting out miles apart, completely unaware of each other, but they're both about to stumble upon the exact same question, a huge one, about what reality even is. So, for Mattias, it all starts when his father, Henrik, passes away. And he has to go back to his childhood home. And let me tell you, this is not a happy homecoming. The whole house just feels cold, clinical. It's completely saturated with the memory of his dad, whose job was to look at things, to diagnose, to find the hidden flaw in everything. And that included his own family. Meanwhile, Petra's story kicks off with this really unsettling moment. She's just standing in her kitchen, and suddenly, her mind just sort of collapses on itself. Everything, every thought, every memory, every feeling, it all gets compressed into this one super dense point. She calls it a lump in the thinking. It's not physical, but it's enough to completely throw her entire world off its axis. All right, section 2, the crack in the world. Because for both Mattias and Petra, those first moments, they're just the beginning. They're like the first tiny cracks in a window that's about to completely shatter, changing how they see everything. So for Mattias, the crack really opens up when he steps into his father's old study. And what he finds is just, wow. It's packed with all these secret notebooks. Turns out, his father had this secret 30-year project, an obsession, really. He called it a taxonomy of the invisible. Basically, he was trying to create a catalog of the hidden patterns that link everything in existence. And check out this quote from one of the notebooks. "The cancer is not chaos. It is a word, in a language I am beginning to learn." I mean, that tells you everything, right? Henrik wasn't just looking at a disease and diagnosing it. He was trying to read it. He was convinced it was all part of some universal language, a grammar you could find everywhere, whether you're looking at a cell under a microscope or the patterns of frost on a window. Now, over in Berlin, Petra finds someone who actually gets what she's going through. It's her colleague, Lucas. She tells him about this lump in the thinking, probably expecting him to think she's crazy, but he doesn't. He totally gets it. He tells her it's a known state, a way of seeing where the space between things suddenly becomes way more interesting and more real than the things themselves. Okay, section 3, learning a new gaze. Because that's the key, isn't it? Both of them, in their own ways, are now being forced to learn a totally new way of looking at the world around them. Mattias dives headfirst into his dad's big theory, what he called the primary pattern. Now, this isn't about one specific shape, like a spiral or something. It's more like a deep-seated tendency in nature. It's this idea that certain patterns will just repeat themselves over and over again at totally different scales. Like how the branches of a tree can look like the structure of a river delta, or even a piece of music by Bach. So yeah, again, we come back to Henrik's main thing. The cancer is not chaos, it is a word in a language. For him, it was always about finding meaning inside of a form. Even in something as seemingly chaotic as a disease, he was certain there was an order, a grammar, and you could learn to read it if you just paid close enough attention. And what's so cool is that Petra, in the world of architecture, lands on this idea that's almost the mirror image of Henrik's. She starts to think that the most powerful structures are the ones defined not by what's there, but by what's been removed, by the absence. And this just lays it out so perfectly, doesn't it? You've got these two ways of seeing. Mattias is learning to see what's present, to read the deep text of how things are organized, just like his father did with his microscope. Petra, though,
She's doing the opposite. She's creating an architecture of negative space, framing the emptiness to make you see the invisible connections. They're like two sides of the same coin, coming at the same truth from opposite directions.
Section 4. The edges dissolve. So as they go deeper and deeper down these rabbit holes, something strange starts to happen. The lines start to get blurry. The boundaries that we all take for granted, what's me and what's the world, they just start to dissolve. And a key concept here is the membrane. Think of it like any border, your skin, the wall of a room, the membrane of a cell. It's what separates inside from outside. Well, for both Mattias and Petra, that membrane starts to get leaky. It becomes permeable. And that solid distinction between inside and outside just falls apart. For Mattias, this gets very real, very physical. He goes down into the cellar of his house, this pitch-black space he calls the chamber. And in that total, absolute darkness, he literally loses the feeling of where his body ends and the room begins. The edges just dissolve. And he has this profound realization. His self isn't some solid thing. It's just a temporary pattern. When he finally comes out of there, his sight has completely changed. He looks at the house, and it's not just wood and nails anymore. It's like a living recording of every single moment that's ever happened there. Petra, she takes this idea and makes it tangible. She has this big project at a ruined old sanatorium, but her plan isn't to build anything. Nope. Her whole project is about subtraction. She starts carefully removing walls, taking out parts of the ceiling, basically editing the building to frame the empty space. She's physically dissolving that boundary between inside and out. And this brings us to our final section, a pattern of connection. This is where everything comes together, where these two totally separate journeys finally lead to the exact same, really profound truth about what connection really means. So Mattias finds the last piece of the puzzle in his father's work. It's hundreds and hundreds of photographs. And what Henrik had done was pair his images from the microscope with photos he took of just everyday nature. You get these incredible pairings, right? The branching inside a human lung next to a bare winter tree. The folds of a brain next to lichen growing on a rock. It's the visual proof he was looking for, this whole hidden world of visual rhymes. Then, in the very last entry in his father's last notebook, Mattias finds the biggest revelation of all, the primary pattern. It isn't an object. It's not a thing you can find out in the world. It's an action. Henrik writes, "The pattern is the shape that attention makes when it is fully present." It's not something you find. It's something you create by the very act of looking with total focus. And that's the final click. Mattias realizes that this complete, total act of seeing, well, that's what love is. It's the primary pattern. And at the same time, Petra, through her work, realizes that real connection is like a knot without a rope. It's a pattern, a relationship, that holds its shape even after the physical things it once tied together are gone. So the big idea we're left with isn't just that the world has all these cool patterns in it. It's that the world is actually looking back at us. It's an active partner in how we perceive everything. And that leaves us with a final, really big question to think about, for you to think about. If you truly believed the world was always looking back, how would that change the way you see,